Yo, it's your boy Uncle Pre with another episode of the Unfiltered Podcast in the studio. Yes, we're ready. Same hat, same trousers, just a different shirt. We've got to mix it up as we do. This week, I have got a neurotherapist in the room. Big up, Jenny. What are you saying?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. The shyness is already creeping. Jenny, what are you doing? What are you doing to me?
It's just how I'm feeling. Ugh. Quite nerve-wracking, actually.
Nah, you're all good. Thank you for coming through. Thank you for finding a date in the diary so we can have this conversation. I know we spoke before. We had a little chat about what this podcast could be like. And I think one of the things I took away from that initial call was the link in like what we both do and why I think yours is a bit more cooler. just like I felt like you were educating me big time. And I was like, yeah, when the time's right, I'm probably going to have to reach out to her to be like, yeah, you need to help me in some shape or form, because like some things did like take me a bit by storm. I was like, yeah, I could definitely work on this myself. But give the audience a bit more of an introduction to yourself, what you do, and more importantly, why you do it.
Okay. So I'm a neurotherapist or occupational therapist by background, specialized in neuroscience. I feel like I'm like regurgitating here, but I'm going to go with it for now. And I've basically worked in the field of neuroscience for a really long time since I qualified. And it's where my passion lies, where my heart lies as soon as I got into it. Otherwise, I would have become a lawyer, basically. So it's where my heart lies. But in terms of how I've got to where I am today, so I've worked with people with brain injuries, strokes, brain tumors, all sorts of different things. But the bit that got me the most was when we don't process our emotions effectively and we don't process life events effectively either, and how they have a huge lasting impact on the way in which our brain wiring is, as well as how our nervous system is responding to day-to-day life, and then thinking about the thoughts that we have, which is all quite habitual. And people can become quite lost within themselves. And what really hit home to me was when I was working in an outpatient clinic, I was seeing people like us coming into clinic who were young, vibrant, had a huge career going for them, so many different things, but they had so much high functioning anxiety, so much pressure, so many expectations that their physical body was struggling, shutting down in the way of feeling fatigued, brain fog, burnt out, not being able to walk, not being able to think properly. Some people were having what are called non-epileptic seizures, so nothing showing on brain scans in that way, but having seizure-like activity that is quite scary when you go through something like that. So that's when I kind of felt like this is really difficult when you get physical symptoms, and often that's when people end up in the hospital streamline of accessing help and all of those sorts of things. But what if we looked at prevention before we even get to any of those physical symptoms? What if we were brave enough and strong enough to face some of those challenges that we've buried inside ourselves and suppressed, to just continue with life, only to find that life is sort of dictating to us, or events are dictating to us, or emotions are dictating to us, which we're completely unaware of.
Yeah.
So that's why I created Neuro Mind Body as a platform to start talking about holistic practices, thinking about the brain, thinking about the mind and the body, and how to integrate it all together so that we can do the things that are important to us. So whatever it might be to each individual, whether it's their career, relationships, finances, whatever it might be, what is pertinent to you at that time. But often I find they all interlink and interlink.
No, they do. They do. I'll have a situation where a client will want to talk to me about their business, and then the reason why that's not succeeding is because their relationship is terrible, whether that's with a family relative or their partner. And it's a case of that stress you're bringing into your business.
Yeah.
And I can definitely help you find ways in your strategy, and I don't know what they're doing half the time in terms of within their business, but you know how to create a to-do list and set goals and milestones, etc. But those results won't be exactly what you truly want them to be until you alleviate that stress you bring into work every day.
Yeah.
And so like you articulate it so much better than I do, but like the way you're putting it, I do see the links. Like when it comes to a client talking to me about why haven't I got a boyfriend, and what can I be doing differently here, etc. It's like, you can date as many guys as you like, you can swipe right to as many guys as you like, you can keep continuing that process until you face the fact that there is a challenge right now at home there is stress at home, there is parental pressure, the comparisons are creeping in, you're seeing what everyone else is doing, you've not healed from an ex-relationship, all of this other background stuff that you're just avoiding talking about and working on, you're going to get the same results.
Yeah, there is that. And also there's this, I guess there's a process of gravitating towards what we already know. So a lot of the time, if we think about the brain and how it's mapped out and programmed, before we're even born, when we're in the mother's womb, it's responding to what's going on around us. And then when we're born, when we talk about the nervous system, we're like a sponge. We're just absorbing everything that's going on around us. So if everything is chaotic around us, that's the programming that we're basically working by.
Is that what sticks in our subconscious after?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And so as we work through life, we keep gravitating towards the same things. So, for example, if we've had parents that have been, let's say, avoidant or a bit distant, can't express their emotions, don't really know how to show up for us and show that affection and love, that might look like, you know, you go to school or something like that and you've come back and you've got 80% on an exam and the response is, how come you didn't get 90%? Something like that. So you're constantly kind of trying to vie for that love. For that love. Like, is this not good enough? Is this not good enough? And what ends up happening is that you will choose, naturally, the brain, you will choose people who don't value you to be in a relationship with as well, because you're repeating the cycle. And the reason why we do that is because it feels safe.
Yeah.
Even though from a mindset point of view, we might think, this is not good for me. This is not going to go down the right road for me. It's not what I want. But the brain knows how to cope in that situation.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes it's a way of, this is my time, this is my opportunity to make it better, to make that person love me. They're going to accept me finally. So we often actually choose the wrong partners based on what we've been through. And that's something we don't acknowledge. And so that's why we end up repeating cycles and patterns and think, why is this happening to me? Why am I not kind of getting into a long-term relationship with somebody? Or why does this person, you know, they always cheat on me, or this happens, or whatever it is. It's a repetitive cycle. So what I would say to people is, if anything is on repeat, on loop in your life, there's a fundamental area in self that needs to be healed, and not to ignore it, essentially.
All my clients, if you're listening, listen, that there, I've said it to you before. It's exactly the same thing. You're repeating the cycle, and it's so bang on point. Like, I feel what you're saying right now, I say it in my own way, and I feel like it hits home to many different degrees, because it's like, if we go back to that dating example, you are attracting a certain type of partner. What you're not doing in some degree, and I've got friends on this front, it's like you're not really manifesting someone who's really going to serve you and your requirements and your needs, because you also haven't let go of something that hurts. So if you've got cheated on in the past, as an example, you're bringing that energy into this relationship or this dating scene, and in your head you're thinking, yeah, I own it, I'm in a great place, X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is you're scared that this person's going to do the exact same thing to you that your ex did.
Yeah.
So your behavior and your actions change.
Yeah.
So you don't walk into this relationship like you walked into the last one, just chilled, more relaxed, going with the flow. You're so fearful, you're constantly trying to show up.
Yeah.
Your attention to detail is probably at a sky high, where as soon as you see him looking at another girl, you're thinking, she's better than me. Before you've actually even digested the fact that he's never cheated in his life. He's totally against it. He's actually been cheated on in the past. Like, he gets you. But you're about to fuck this right up right now because of your overthinking, your over analytical brain right now, which is, I don't feel like it's not a bad thing to have. I just feel like the mechanics and what you need to be doing is let go.
Yeah.
Put that to bed versus allowing it to keep cropping up.
Yeah. I think the reason why a lot of people struggle with it is because often it is that we're told, you know, let go, get over it, move on. And it's not as simple as that, because there's a huge grieving process that's taking place, and the individual doesn't even realize it's grief. So we can understand grief in the context of a loved one passing away, but we often don't understand grief in the context of what we thought would be.
Yeah.
So having that life, that relationship with somebody.
Exactly that.
And we also live in a society where being in a situationship is it's a phenomena. It's what's happening all over, right?
She said it, not me. A situationship.
So what ends up happening is that you've got this dynamic external to you, but then you've got this internal dynamic of what you expect the relationship to be or what you want it to be. So you're having two relationships with the same person. One is the reality of what is going on, and the second is the fantasy of what is being desired. And so when we haven't grieved the loss of the fantasy of what we wanted and the reality, that's when we bring it back into a new relationship, that kind of bitterness, that resentment, that hardship, and closing our heart off, self-sabotaging, thinking that this person's going to hurt me, so I'm going to hurt them before they do that to me. And often also, when people have had that dynamic playing out in their life for quite some time, if they come across somebody who's quite secure, loving, genuine, caring, consistent, all of these sorts of things, it feels like a really scary concept. All of a sudden, the brain is sort of being like, what is this? I've never experienced this before. This is too good to be true. You need to run away. This is really unnerving for me. So often people don't trust that somebody could be that genuine.
Yeah.
They've only experienced deceit, being betrayed, those sorts of things.
It's that common saying, in it, too good to be true.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a scary place to be, because like I've tried to tell a number of my clients, both male and female, that what you probably don't realize in this process, that you can keep dating. You're not going to listen to me on that front. You're going to keep swiping right and talk to all these people. Fantastic. What you may fail to realize is that the right person could turn up.
Right.
You've manifested it in your own, they could turn up.
Yeah.
But because of your behavior, your attitude, and the way you are so fearful about things, or you're overthinking around things, you're going to fuck that up. You're going to turn it down. You're going to not see it for what it truly could be like, because you're trapped in this mindset where nothing's ever good enough. Never ever works out for you. You're always stuck in a place where bad things always come your way. You've programmed yourself to believe that that's going to be your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way, but I think one of my biggest challenges I have with the people I speak to, and this also goes out on social media as well, like in terms of the normal short form content, is I can take someone through a number of exercises to a step, but it's doing that final action. And I feel like a number of people I have coached in the past, and when they go over that line, it does make a significant big difference. But one of the big things is, you know what now needs to be done, or something that you've never done before possibly needs to be experimented with to see whether or not that lets go of the rope that's holding you back in life, etc., etc. Do they do that though? No.
I think sometimes it's really hard for people when, okay, so one of my beliefs, I feel, and there's kind of, I guess, some studies about it as well, but a belief that I have, we all desire love. We all want to love, and we all want to be loved. But when we haven't experienced authentic love for just acceptance for who we are, so if we think about the world that we live in, a lot of the time it's sort of, what's in it for me? Whether you're linking with friends now, it's sort of like a network situation. What can I get out of this? You know, are they a good friend for me? What's in it for me, sort of thing. And often what can end up happening is that receiving love, genuine love, kind of being open to that, we can feel really unworthy of it. And that's the sort of block that we come in with. So as you said, you know, even though you've kind of manifested it and you've brought it into your life and you're like, this is what I want. And these are these self-sabotaging behaviors, because it's going back to that am I even worthy of this? Why would this person want to be with me? So really, you're right, people repeat the cycle because sometimes it's really hard to go into that introspection. So often a lot of people will spend so much of their time with their friends bad-mouthing that person. They were awful, they were terrible, they did this to me, they did that to me, and they probably did. Maybe they did. But also, we need to think about accountability. I allowed that to happen. I engaged in that. I didn't remove myself when I realized at some point that this doesn't feel right to me. This is not making me happy. This is hurting me even. It's not to say that the other person is responsible for your happiness, but they are now causing you hurt, anxiety, and pain. But I still stayed there. Why did I do that? Why did I betray myself? Why did I disrespect myself? Where does this come from?
Yeah. It's nuts, and I feel like I talk about it how I know the process can be switched. So what I mean by that is that I know I felt very unworthy. I know how it brought me down and how I used to looking back on it now, years ago in ex relationships, I'd self-sabotage and not even realize I was self-sabotaging. I just couldn't accept the love because I felt so unworthy of it. And then now when I look back, I'm thinking, rah, man, that was, you push back. You decided not to be all giddy and lovey and dovey at times in your puppy love phases because you said that it wasn't cool to be that, but really and truly, you just couldn't accept the fact that someone wanted to show you that bit of affection. And it's scary. And obviously now seeing the light in my own way, I was very fortunate. Like I mentioned to you on that call that I went through NLP, and I balled up, changed the game for me. This one conversation, well, this one session over a number of them, we talked about unworthiness, and something just went. And I think the realization I try and echo and tell people was, I realized that I had made feeling unworthy my best friend. I made it very comfortable to just be in that mindset, to use pain as a motivation versus accepting that it's okay, you didn't do well, but it's fine. Like if I failed an exam, I used that pain to push me forward. And it was so toxic when I look back on it. It was like, bro, you're punishing yourself. Even if you excel right now and you do well, you can't celebrate those wins. And it was such a very, very disturbing mindset I had. I didn't realize it. I just thought it was normal.
Yeah.
It's the way my granddad lived his life. He never asked for help.
Yeah.
Always went about his life with a smile on his face. And maybe it was a bit of that, or maybe it was just me thinking that I can't ask for anything and I'm stuck and this is my life. And when I saw the switch within this session, and this, well, she was a teacher at the time, but basically just said to me, what would life look like if you were completely worthy?
Yeah.
And I never thought about it
Big
like that.
question.
And I was just like, oh fuck. I guess I'm just as good as my friends. Oh shit, I'm not stupid. It doesn't matter like how I don't care. I can be emotional. That's not a problem anymore. And it all started coming back out, and I was thinking, the penny dropped there, and it made me realize that you have a choice now. You can either go back to, and I always use this analogy of like, it's this road. You've got this road where it's all dark, cloudy, rainy, thunderstorms. It's just miserable. And the flip side of it, it's the same journey, but the sun's shining, birds are out there. You have a choice. You can just cross the path. You don't have to be stuck in this trap place.
Yeah.
Because you know what's possible. But how, like, I can't push you there. You need to be able to take that brave step. And what that may require you doing is letting go of some of the things that are still holding you back. And I feel like that's the bridge that some people can't cross.
So I kind of find that I hear you, and I think that's very fair in making that transition. And insight is a huge thing. When we are completely oblivious to our pain and our wounds, and we're reacting from a place of survival. So essentially, there's a part of the brain, and that's called the amygdala.
Yep.
And that part of the brain stores all of these negative experiences. And then when we are in the face of something that is threatening to us, it gets triggered. And when it gets triggered, we go back into those same responses that kept us safe at that time of fight, flight, freeze, right? So we react in the same way every time because we know the brain wants to keep us alive. That's the number one thing it wants to do. We haven't experienced an alternative reality of actually, this is how I'm showing up in this situation. There is an alternative way for me to engage in this dynamic. What is that? And to test it out and see what it would feel like, much like what you said. Try it out. What feedback do you get? How does it make you feel? Because it's showing you something. But often in terms of this high functioning anxiety almost, that the negative almost propels the individual. People are thinking, I'm not worthy. I feel I'm not worthy. So I have to excel. I have to go over and beyond. And you see this a lot, maybe more so in men, maybe women too. But you can see men who maybe came from nothing, who are like multimillionaires, making so much money, driving these big luscious cars, and look at me, look at my status, look at my power, and that all stems from low self-esteem.
Oh,
Not
for
power,
sure. For
not
sure.
like not a self-empowerment
Yeah.
process. And that's because that lack of worthiness is there, and then there's this self-sabotaging behavior that consistently repeats itself. Essentially, what we need to do is acknowledge what is that pattern, what is that behavior, start thinking about doing different things that are in line with our well-being, that take care of us, that nourish us. So that could be, exercising, it could be journaling, it could be meditating. And these things sound really easy. It's like, oh, that's all it is: meditating, journaling, go exercise. But to show up for yourself consistently every day doing all of these things is not easy. People try for a week or two and then we backtrack again. It's this consistency that essentially you're showing yourself respect, that I respect me, I show up for me, I take care of me in a loving and kind way. And when we start doing that for ourselves, we can accept that and receive that from other avenues in our life. We can then choose a new path and say, I don't need to walk down a path of self-destruction. I can walk down a path of abundance, happiness. I can walk a path of fulfilling my purpose, doing what I really want to do. But it's that programming and understanding how we're feeling in our body as well. A lot of people are disconnected from their emotions. They don't even know what they're feeling. Some people that I've worked with, when, to me, it's quite obvious they're angry, but they can't say I'm feeling angry.
That was me all the time. I'm not angry. No, but you are. I'm not fucking angry. Leave me alone. I'm like, but you're angry. I'm like,
yeah.
Now you're making me angry. One of those ones.
Yeah. So it's that lack of understanding, and that's not anyone's fault. It's because we just haven't learned an emotional language.
Yeah.
We haven't had parents around us saying to us that, oh, I think you're feeling angry in this situation, or are you worried in this situation? And the reason why that is, particularly in the South Asian community, is a lot of our parents and community were surviving. They're trying to make ends meet, they're trying to keep a family going, try to keep it all together. They and also a lot of people are from immigrant backgrounds, so on and so forth. You're trying to pave your way, figure out what's going on. And so there hasn't been that emotional intellect involved in people's upbringing to identify with emotions and how they feel in our physical body.
Yeah, I hear that. But I think the question I want to try and get to, and I'm hoping in this episode we can try and get closer to that, that answer is, what are some more basic steps that people can start taking to be able to allow themselves to get vulnerable? Because that's one thing I throw out to everyone. It's going to be uncomfortable, but part of the journey is to make the uncomfortable comfortable. It's a very, very, very important part of the healing journey, whatever journey is. But once you get into that position, you're going to realize that wasn't that bad. Okay, cool, sweet. All right, now what? Let's see what happens. And then eventually over time, it starts becoming a bit more ingrained within you, if that makes sense. And what I want to try and achieve with I know there are steps I can take, and I'm only going based on the experiences I've been on, but everyone else is different. They're on their own journey. But I think what's missing is you can get to a point where exactly what needs to then be done for you to possibly start crossing that bridge. But you're not going to do any of that because it's fucking difficult. Because you just know the one person you need to forgive is never going to change. They're going to be stuck in their ways and you just can't get past that. Or the hurt was too horrific for you, whether it was physical trauma, mental trauma, what if it happens again? And those thoughts just keep arising and rising. And I am a big believer that you can move past that with, again, careful work, and more importantly, the baby steps, being vulnerable to take whatever steps you need to take, those small actions to be in a place where what you see as possible can now be the life you want to be living. That's fulfillment all there for you. The problem is that you're identifying what the lifestyle you want and it's all fancy rosy daisy, and you will complain to me why things never work out for you, and we've explained like what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are those baby steps? And they'll be like, I could do this, I could do that, so why aren't you doing it? I just fucking can't, and I'm like, and I think like for me it's like I know there's a process behind it, hence why like when I coach someone, it's not going to be a quick fix. It does take time. But asking you more specifically, if you were to say baby steps that people could take that are possibly going to allow them to take that first step on that bridge, what would you say those steps would be?
To begin with, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable with yourself.
Yeah.
And that means actually really taking a step back and looking at your life and looking at what has happened.
How do you do that though if you're not the kind of person to be reflective, to journal for instance, or it's difficult for you to take that step back?
I would say, so we can look at journal prompts as a way of guiding our writing in terms of our thoughts and putting them down on paper.
Yeah.
But I think people are aware. It's just not wanting to accept it, not wanting to see it for what it is. Because when you accept it and when you see it, you have to do something about it. So if I just ignore it and I'm oblivious to it or just turn a blind eye, I don't have to do anything about it. So I've met lots of people, whether it's through work or personal experiences and those sorts of things. A lot of the time people do know what they're feeling. A lot of the time they do know what is stopping them. But acknowledging it means I need to do something about it. So if I just don't acknowledge it, and like you said, I'm not angry, I'm not annoyed, why are you saying that to me? It's almost like if I agree and say, yes, I am angry, then I have to acknowledge what has made me angry. And maybe actually the anger hasn't even stemmed from the situation that's going on right now, but it resembles something that's happened way back that has brought up that frustration again. Like, God, did I mess it up again? Like, why is this happening to me? This person doesn't even think I'm capable. And so some people get angry, some people shut down, some people do different things. So what I would say is, okay, if you're not feeling aware, let's say, just think about, how do I react in different situations? Do I shout? Do I get loud? Is that the feedback that I'm getting from people? Do I shut down? Do I not say anything at all? Or do I go into people-pleasing mode and forget myself altogether and say, oh my God, how do I help you? How do I make this better? What about you? And what about you? And forget me. Never mind me. So long as you're okay. And then that turns into resentment eventually. So what is that first step? It is essentially trying to be vulnerable with yourself and thinking about, how am I showing up? And I'll be honest with you, most people who by the time they get to yourself or somebody like me or even listening to this have an understanding somewhere that something is not quite right, and it's more about being brave enough now to do something about it and with it. So I think that's the first step, is actually, I'm going to do something about this.
And I feel like that's another basic way of possibly throwing that out there is, like, say for instance you want to try and lose weight or get into shape. The first easy thing to do is, or the first basic step to do would be, get a gym membership. Don't have to go gym just yet, just get the membership. Because now you've crossed that bridge, you've made it a little bit more easier. There's no more excuse now. You can go once, you can just go check it out. Maybe just give it a little feel, see the people that are there. Is it comfortable for you to go at that time, or is it better to go in the evening or first thing? You can learn that stuff, but that would be like the first thing. But with what you're saying right now, I do feel that that's one of the most hardest steps in being vulnerable and acknowledging that there's a challenge here and doing something about it. I have come across so many stubborn people who genuinely will look at it and be like, I know there's something I should do about it. Something else kicks in, whether it's their ego, their pride. They don't want to upset others by making them very well aware that I want to require extra additional assistance right now. I feel like the need to say I need help is such a terrible thing for people to get off their chests.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're in an emergency, damn right you're calling for help left, right and center, right?
Yeah.
Why are we not treating these kind of situations as an emergency? Because truthfully, if you were in my position years ago, 25 years, 26 years of your life not knowing that you felt unworthy, that's an emergency.
Yes. Yes.
And fortunately, I was in a space where I could have the people around me to help me get through what it was. Sick. But like I'll use an example. My sister, for instance, not necessarily the most easiest of people to get on with as a child, like in terms of very friendly with all her friends and stuff, but within family, stubborn pain in the ass, honestly. Never her fault was always the quote that we used to throw around. And whenever we used to argue, it was a case of like, I knew I always had to go and apologize to her. It'd have to be me who was the bigger person regardless, because she would never see it from that point of view. And it took for her seeing the work I was doing and hearing a couple of my podcast episodes to be like, I get it now. And then her taking a conscious decision to open up to me about X, Y, and Z and stuff that was going on, being a bit brave on that front, and then reaching out personally to go find out about how she could get further help, because she knew there were things that were holding her back. She did some sort of CBT course, and like there are so many platforms and providers out there. You don't need to go and hire someone who's going to charge you a shitload of money. There are free services out there, but then you also pay for what you get to, so you got to be mindful of that. But I do feel that that step is so important. But there are so many people who are stuck in their ways where it's, I just can't do it, I'm not going to do it. And I feel like that then stops them from being their true authentic self in this place, because you're repeating the things, like you said, you're in this cycle where you're gonna lash out, you're gonna lose your shit, you're not gonna create healthy relationships because you personally are bringing an element of toxicity into it.
To be fair, I think it's with people who are stubborn and they struggle from that disposition, often it's the accountability side. So a people pleaser is going to be the one who's going to say, I'm sorry I upset you. They're the ones who are going to break the ice first. Because what they're going around doing is, I need to make everything better. I need to calm everything down. I need to bring a sense of resolve into the household again. Now, what the people pleaser is not understanding is actually they are feeding into that behavior of the stubborn person. They're not allowing them space to take accountability. And the people pleaser as well, and some of us won't like hearing this, it's a form of manipulation to some degree.
Oh, it is.
Because what happens is it's sort of like, the way I can regulate myself in this situation is by trying to regulate everybody else. Let me go around and make sure everybody's okay, and then I feel safe and I feel okay. But what we do in that situation is we deprive other people of growing and learning and understanding. And what's interesting is when we take a step back from that situation and think, I'm not going to impose myself on it anymore. Actually, it's not even my baggage. It's not my issue to deal with. I can love somebody, I could be there for somebody, but I don't need to be the one who breaks down all my boundaries and, goes ahead and lets people feel like I'm the one in the wrong all the time when you may not be. That space allows the other individual to think about things from a different disposition. Now, your sister has thought about things in a really good way, in that I'm going to go and access certain support and so on and so forth. With some people, and this is what I've experienced, is when you put those boundaries in place and decide that actually I'm not going to go about, self-sabotaging and self-sacrificing. That's what I see it as sometimes. It's all about everybody else, not about me. And when you remove yourself from that, often people who only wanted to take from you because that's what they enjoyed, that's what they needed you for, and now you've said, no, sorry, you can't take from me anymore. This is where I draw the line. Often you'll find those people just dissipate and they leave your life. So the stubbornness and that sort of, how can I put it, that personality of I'm right, you're wrong, you're not really going to get anywhere with that person. Also, people don't know how to invest in their self-care. They have no idea. We've not been conditioned to think, and it's not a conditioning, but we're all kind of like, oh yeah, new trainers, I'll go buy those, new handbag,
You
gotta
firing
get that.
shots? Fuck's sakes, Jesus.
Eyes
The
everywhere.
cameras didn't see it, but she was like, those fucking Yeezys.
Or, like that new handbag, I'm going to go buy that. All of this just validates self, but we've seen this around. We've been conditioned to think through media, through advertising, that this is what's going to make me happy. I'm going to go buy that new outfit. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go on this holiday. And then now we've got social media. I'm going to Instagram it because look at my amazing life.
Yeah.
Isn't it wonderful? Like I'm eating at this restaurant and inside, actually, when I go home, I'm crying myself to sleep.
Yeah.
You don't see that bit. And that's what's sort of going on essentially, is that we don't give our whatever wealth we have, we don't release it for things like therapy, care, coaching, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
When we hear those figures or whatever it might be, and I say this because I know that some people have different dispositions in terms of financial needs and so on and so forth, but there are also lots of people out there who are financially very comfortable but will still be
Say no.
reluctant.
Oh, I know people like this.
Yes.
I know people like
Yeah.
this. And if they listen to this, they know I'm not looking at the camera because they know I'm
Yeah.
firing shots their way indirectly. But no, it's so true, because it's like, I try to break it down. When I first started, like the whole business kind of side of things, it was a case of I had to learn to realize that I can't work with everyone.
Yeah. No.
So from a business perspective, you got to find your ideal kind of client, right?
Sure.
So if I'm trying to work with, let's say, someone who earns a 6-figure salary, like I have to position myself very differently to how I want to, if I was to work with a student.
Yeah.
Student hasn't possibly got a job on a student loan.
Yeah.
So you have to generally think, well, this person's going to afford X, Y, and Z. This person's going to afford this as well. So I obviously niched down to an audience where I was like, okay, cool. This is how I'm going to position myself. Cool. I have got people I know of who are very like in shock or in awe and like, wow, yeah, I definitely wouldn't pay anywhere near that. Like I couldn't. And it's like, what you're failing to realize is, if we looked at, let's say, your yearly expenditure or even your monthly expenditure, for instance, you're possibly putting that stuff out there, drinks, alcohol, drugs in the more serious scenarios, cigarettes, eating out consistently, buying clothes, all of this kind of stuff. How much of all of that, what you're doing right now, is actually answering the challenges you've got at hand?
Yeah. It's a coping mechanism, isn't it? So it's a survival behavior, essentially.
Yeah.
I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling under pressure. I'm not feeling worthy. I'm not feeling good enough. I'm going to go buy this thing that's going to make me feel instantly good, that instant gratification.
Yeah.
I'm going to just scroll around on social media and spend my day doing that because I'm getting, high levels of dopamine hits in my brain. I'm just going to go and, have a night out and forget all my problems. Now, to some degree, it's not our fault because we've been sold this.
Yeah.
We've been sold this notion, Friday drinks and one drink Friday or whatever it might be. And it's never one drink. It's never. So we've been sold these notions already.
Yeah.
And so that's what we gravitate to. And it's such an alien concept almost that, hold on a minute, I need to invest in my well-being. I need to actually invest in taking care of myself. Now, going back to when you said people would take care of themselves if there was something physically wrong, right? If your leg's broken, yes, in the United Kingdom, we have the NHS in England and we would access that. It's not the same for mental health and we don't need to go down that route. There are reasons for it. But what I would say is that if somebody's leg was broken, you'd do something about it. You're not going to walk on your broken leg.
Yeah.
But we're all walking on our wounds daily and we're just making them deeper and deeper and deeper by not attending to them.
Yeah.
So it's a mindset shift. It's sort of a cultural shift that maybe will take a little bit of time to happen, that actually I do invest in myself. I do invest in my healing. And also finding the right person that you connect with. So a lot of the time people are kind of cognitively healing is the way I think about it. And what I mean by that is I'll read this self-help book, or I'll listen to this podcast or whatever it might be, and that's it. I get it now and off I go. I don't think people are understanding that this is just a bit of a taster to understand what is going on. It's more food for thought.
Yeah.
It's more to inspire,
Yeah.
to question, to be curious
Yeah.
and intrigued by what more is there that I could access.
Yeah.
But I think people stop here. They're like, oh, that resonates with me and that's it. And then switch off and carry on with
Yeah.
the day, rather than that resonates with me. What can I do about it? How can I go about it? And it's not just mindset work that I need to reframe my thoughts, because that's kind of being regurgitated to people and sold to people. Mindset, 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 and buy into it, buy my book, buy this and look at this, or whatever it might be. It's not just mindset. You see, we have a muscle memory in our body. When we react to things, we are heightened enough. We have a physiological response in our nervous system to respond. It's like, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling angry, whatever it is. Now, when we don't do anything with that energy in our physical body, it stays stuck inside us, it's stagnant. So there are many layers to this, of being connected to your body, as well as thinking about your thoughts and reframing them, and then thinking about how can I change the pathways in my brain, because it is programmed like a
Yeah.
computer to a certain kind of programming of how we're going to operate on a day-to-day basis, and that needs to be unlearned, and it's absolutely possible.
Yeah.
So before, in science, they would think by a certain age, neuroplasticity, which is referred to as the rewiring of our brain, is something that is less accessible. It's more accessible when we're young. But now we know that actually it's accessible at all times, at any time. So it's just up to us when we actually want to make that
Yeah.
change, when we want to make that shift.
I feel like people do want to make that change, and they'd love to see a difference in their lives.
Yeah.
It then also just boils down to the fact of the fear that arises, whether or not it's a fear of success,
Yes.
what's actually going to happen,
Yes.
or what happens if it doesn't go to plan
Yeah.
and I have to start again. And it's like, you can echo it and you can hear about all the motivational talks in regards to Michael Jordan talking about failure, how many shots he had to take to get the winning shots and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, cool, it's inspiring. So why are you so afraid to fail? What are you really worried at? And like, one of the biggest rewiring of the mindsets I had was like, I try not to say it as often as I used to, was like, worst case scenario, this happens. I now try and spin it and be like, what's the best thing that happens from this? Doesn't go to plan. What's the best thing that happens from she saying no to you, or him not feeling you on that date? Oh shit, didn't think of it like that.
I guess also a lot of the time when we're going into dating, especially, we think about, will they like me? Will they want to be with me? And we don't go in thinking, will I like them? Do I want to be with them?
What would you do in these scenarios?
I would position myself. Do I like them?
Are you on that front right now?
Yeah, that's how I would
Respect.
think about things.
I'll give you one of those. I'll give you one of those in the air.
Yeah.
It's a bit far. Now, okay, cool. That's gang.
Because you need to think, I used to be like that and think, oh, will they like me? Is this okay? Is this good enough? Da 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 da. And I thought to myself, why am I doing this? And often the dynamic wouldn't go anywhere. It wouldn't work. And thankfully it didn't. I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for where I am today. But a lot of the time we don't work from that disposition of going into a situation and thinking, what am I going to get from this? Not in a way of like, what do you bring to the table for me? But do I even like you? Do I like being around you? Do I like your energy? How do you make me feel? It's the same thing when you go in for a job interview.
Yeah.
So I've worked at one of the most, I guess, like well-respected neuroscience hospitals in London, in the country, for 10 years. And when I went to for that interview, I was quite nervous about it to begin with. And they don't give you permanent contracts very easily either. So you have to interview quite regularly. Towards like the end, I got headhunted for another job. And I literally walked in without much preparation, thinking, you need me.
Yeah.
I know how good I am.
Tell him.
Yeah.
Tell him.
I know exactly how good I am. I know what I bring to the table. I know what I know. And I also know what I don't know. And I know what I need to learn. But you need me. I know my worth. And in that situation, I went and I interviewed. I also was very much like, I'm only working 4 days a week. I'm not working 5. This is how I'm going to work it. It was all on my terms, essentially. and it worked out from that point of view.
Yeah.
But until we don't have that self-confidence of knowing who we are, what we bring to the table, what we're about, we don't go in with that sense of how am I feeling about this? We're all about the other person. And that's when we start changing our behavior, changing our character. And that's when we draw in people who are toxic.
Yeah,
because
we do.
they're going to take from us.
Yeah.
Oh, this person, their self-esteem is low, their confidence is low, and I can just intimidate them and take from them.
Yeah.
But when you show up in your power, knowing who you are and what you're about, that person is they're not going to want to stand around you because they know they can't manipulate you.
Yeah. It's so crazy because I think I've lost a number of connections based on that.
Yeah.
And also like with the whole work mindset, like I have said that so many times. Like own your shit. Like when I try and say like best case scenario, they say no, who missed out? It wasn't me. I went there, I knew what I was going to bring to the table. I knew I wasn't 10 out of 10. I wasn't the finished article. But what they failed to realize in that interview or in that selection process was the kind of person I am and what my values stand for. And if someone's better than me, great.
Yes.
Wish them all the best.
Yeah.
They're not going to get a bit of Uncle Pre right now. And that's on them. That's not on me.
Yeah.
And that's not to... And I feel like I had like one recruiter say to me once upon a time that it came across as a bit like arrogant and too up yourself. And I was like, I apologize if it came across that way. And please send them my regards. That wasn't my intentions.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, I've learned not to allow other people's opinions to get a hold of me. So I know what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
Respectfully, I'm going to showcase that.
Yeah.
I love what you did. I'm working 4 days a week instead of 5. Like, I'd love to throw that out, like, gang. And like, I think people should like know your worth. And I feel like it does come from believing in yourself.
I think it does, and I think it also comes from evidencing it to yourself. So our brain is, it's not stupid, it's not ridiculous. It's not just going to magically, believe something. It needs evidence. It wants you to show it that is a possibility.
Yeah.
So, visualization is a great thing and all of those sorts of things, but we actually need to take some action.
Yeah.
Because that's when the brain is going to be most convinced.
That's true.
And so for me, confidence in my career grew as I continued to go through all the rotations of neuroscience and having like a good reputation, well respected amongst not just my peers, but consultants and neurosurgeons and so on and so forth. And that was evidencing to me, not from a place of arrogance that, oh yeah, look at me sort of a thing, but more from a place of actually building up my confidence, my self-worth, that no, I've come from a very humble start in my family to all of a sudden being around all of these affluent people, because that's what they are and were. Now here I am navigating my way through this. So I think we just don't give ourselves the opportunity.
No, we
to
don't.
think that, how can I put this? I've got to this position to say that to somebody, that this is my worth, this is what I want. Do you want me? Let me know, yes or no. I can do that because I've done a whole load of work that backs it up.
Yep.
It's not just me walking in without doing anything and being like, give me this, and they're looking at you thinking,
yeah. No, it's true. And it's like that energy right now you're talking about can be taken to so many different scenarios at home, and like in my family dynamic, not necessarily the people I live with, but generally at the wider circle. Sometimes it may come across as, okay, you say your piece and you're a bit tough loving, and sometimes it's a bit rude and arrogant. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to be that way.
Yeah.
I also just know that like what used to run before isn't running anymore, because I was put into scenarios where you just had to do it because it was tradition and it was religion. And it's like, well, what if I'm not religious?
Yes.
What if I don't believe in that? Why am I being put into a position where I have to do that? You're telling me that it looks bad to who? It looks bad to you because you care. I don't care.
Yeah.
I respect where you're coming from, and I would do it if I want to do it, but don't force me into something I have to do. And they're like, you're just making a scene now. I'm like, I'm not trying to make a scene. I'll keep it quite mellow if you want me to. But at the same time, like, if I don't feel like I want to do something, I'm not going to do it. Like, don't make me feel obliged that I need to go to every birthday party or I need to turn up to these events where I may have other things I need to be doing. my interest right now, that's not paying me my way in life. That's not giving me the opportunity to help other people. Me going to that event is just a waste of my time. I'm going to be with a bunch of people who I just feel are very judgy, make stupid comments, and I just can't be asked to hear that. Whereas I'm going to use that time instead to go into a podcast room and speak to someone who I feel that recording is going to help educate me and help educate other people. So why want to do that instead?
Yeah.
You take that same energy into a date. I know what I bring to the table. Look, you're a lovely guy. You're beautiful, great eyes, great chin, great beard, whatever it is, all the compliments you want to throw that way. But respectfully, I'm looking for something a bit more serious. And that's not to say that you won't be that person, but we're on different wavelengths. So respectfully, I'm going to say it was nice meeting you. But yeah, I wish you all the best. But I think I'm going to go this way because what you're telling me right now, we're just going to clash, and I don't really need that. And that's owning your shit.
Yeah. And to be honest, when we were going through our healing process and our journey, we start seeing things for what they are.
Yeah.
But actually, this is something that I went through as well. It's sort of values and beliefs, right? What is mine? What do I actually believe in? And what has been handed down to me as a generational thing, just passed down. And you have to sift through it almost and sit there from a place of consciousness. And not from a place of emotion necessarily, but more just thinking in your mind space, in your head space, that what is it that I intrinsically believe in? What is it that holds true to me? Now, there will be generations before us that will find it probably very disrespectful, almost like, gosh, I can't believe you're saying no to this, because they would never had the audacity to do so. It would have been frowned upon. And all of a sudden, it's sort of like expression of, I feel differently, I think differently. And so that can be quite threatening to the individual. And I think also what we need to think about a little bit as well, particularly when it comes to, let's say, immigrant families and those sorts of things, there's this big hold on preserving culture. And actually, if you go back to the countries where perhaps people have originated from, they're probably not even doing half the things.
Don't get me started.
Exactly. Because they're not under this pressure to preserve culture. So it's a really difficult dynamic to be involved in, because they almost feel guilty that, God, does this mean my culture is dying out and I've done something terribly wrong? And this is what I was told before I left as well. Make sure you don't forget who you are. Make sure you don't forget where you come from. Whereas when you're still in that community, still in that country, wherever it may be in the world, it doesn't matter what cultural background we're from, there's no pressure, because it's just natural evolution that's going on in that country. But when we're removed from that dynamic and somewhere else, it's almost sort of like, oh my God, I'm going to be completely judged and, completely kind of berated if I do something different.
I like, it's funny when I used to talk about like the dating scene and talk about like how I wouldn't necessarily care about for like an India wedding and stuff like that. Been to a number of them now, and it's like they actually are quite nice, but like some of the stuff make sense to me. And that's not me sounding to be rude, but just need a bit more of understanding for me to like, okay, cool, I can run with that. Some of the other stuff, I feel like people just either make it up, and this is not to sound rude, and I apologize if anyone takes offense, but it's like you're throwing all of these things at me that this needs to be done for that reason and that, and I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Like, I had to, as one of the best men from my mate's wedding recently, was driving him to the actual venue, and one of the things that they said is you can't reverse.
Oh.
And I was like, what? I was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, you can't reverse because he's not allowed to go backwards. It's part of it. Now this whole ritual needs to be moving forward in life. And I was like, so I'm turning this car right now. There's a car in front. I'm like, look, I'm not lying, bro. It's going to be a tight squeeze. I might have to a little bit. And it was just like an interesting concept. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if we're going for it, we had to get a drive-through. We were getting a little McDonald's in the morning because it was very early. Cheeky little hash brown. And I'm like, bro, we're going to go into the McDonald's, go around it, and then come back on ourselves to then go back out. And he says, yeah, but you're not reversing. I was like, bro, none of this makes sense. What are you talking about? We're just going back on ourselves. Nah. And I was like, all right, okay, cool. It is what it is. But again, everyone's belief systems are a bit like structured in their own way, and I'm cool for it. Just don't try and force that on me, kind of thing. And
I
if
think some of it is a lot of superstition, though, isn't it?
off,
And it's just, it doesn't make any sense, and it is pretty nonsensical.
what the more stupid parts are, like, you know, and like I would like to say, I don't know the actual fact behind it, but like divorce rates aren't low. They do seem to increase on the back end of like, well, compatibility isn't necessarily there. You put all this tradition down to the wedding, and people still get divorced. Then what?
Well, I think also there's a belief in society that, you know, South Asians have a reduced divorce rate in comparison to other communities. And the reason for that is not probably because we're doing a great job of being married or being in relationships. It's probably because it's a lot harder to leave a relationship.
There is that side of it too. Yeah.
I think that's probably what's going on. I think a lot of people would leave their relationship if they could, but are probably not going to do so. The thing is, here's what happens. A lot of people get into codependent relationships. It's not really necessarily an authentic relationship. And when it's all rushed and it happens really quickly and all of those sorts of things, you're so reliant on each other. Now, as humans, we need connection. We definitely need connection. We're not here to live in isolation on a mountaintop somewhere and being like, I'm on my own doing my meditation thing and nobody bother me, although some have chosen that path. But we are here to connect to one another. We're programmed to want human connection.
Yeah.
But often there's such a big pressure. There's a huge pressure, especially for women, to get married, to have a family, to start, like, you know, crack on with it really quickly. And under that pressure, people choose partners that they perhaps otherwise wouldn't, right? They think that, oh my God, I'm nearly 30, I'm 32, whatever it might be, I need to be married by now. You know, God forbid if you're of my age group and they'll be like, oh my God, she's still single, there's something wrong with her, which is not necessarily the case. Maybe you're actually figuring out your life and trying to look for a healthy relationship that's going to work. So a lot of the time, I think people succumb under pressure and get married, and it becomes a very codependent situation where it's very much about, I'm not going to be able to survive without this person financially. I'm not going to be able to survive without this person in terms of just taking care of my life and how to manage in life and cope in life. I'm not going to be able to survive without this person because I just don't know how to navigate and get things done or whatever it might be. I need her for this and she needs me for that. Now, don't get me wrong, we don't need two people who are hyper independent going into a relationship, because that's not a relationship. You're isolated from one another. I don't need you, you don't need me, and really it's just a physical relationship, and that's about it. There's no emotional intimacy. But interdependence is something quite different. And what that reflects on is knowing that you've got this person, and both people have this person that's almost like your stability, your grounding that you can come home to. So when you go out into the world doing all of those independent things and testing the waters and growing and evolving, you always have that secure hub to come back to who's quite solid and grounded for you, and vice versa. And you do learn from each other, and you are reliant on one another for certain things, but you're not reliant on one another to survive and just manage in the basics of life.
Yeah. That is very, very true. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think that's the bit that gets missed.
Yeah.
And under pressure, we end up getting married. And a lot of the time, like something that I have spoken to you about before is, from what my experience has been, I've seen lots of women in particular. I don't know what it's like for guys when they're planning for their wedding and those sorts of things, but you know, they're so much more interested in what my wedding day is going to be like, what outfit I'm going to wear, and who's going to do my hair, who's going to do my makeup, who's going to do this, and this is how it's going to look. And I've not heard people talk too much about, this is the kind of guy that I'd really like to marry. I'd really love for him to have these sorts of traits, this sort of you know, personality or this characteristic, and this is something that really makes me happy, or you know, it's something that I really connect to. This is the kind of connection I'd like. I've never heard those conversations, and so that's partly why I've kind of, I guess, been avoidant of relationships in the past, is I've just seen them to be quite a difficult thing to be part of.
Yeah, no, there's an element of that, and there's possibly, is that your belief system then telling you this is what all relationships are going to be like.
Yeah, totally. And you have to kind of heal that and resolve that actually that's not my relationship. It's not my dynamic. What do I wish for my dynamic to be?
Yeah.
And that's the part where we need to heal. That's the part where we need to kind of unravel what's going on inside us so we don't gravitate to things of the past.
I get that, like mixed kind of thoughts that have happened more recently, let's say within this year in particular. Like I've been trying to say to myself, I'm going to manifest bae. Whatever bae means, whether that's a girlfriend or someone I'm exclusively seeing, or really putting energy into someone on that front. And like I think the challenges I've had is, and I feel like I speak for a number of guys and possibly a number of women as well, who are in the age bracket where they just don't know what should happen. I think majority of people like to be with someone, but again, for the right reasons why you're with that person, right? It's got to work on both fronts. You both connect, and not looking for the perfect match, but something near enough or close towards it. And I think for me, like the challenge I've had personally is, yes, I'd love to have the relationship right now, but at the same time, I also know what challenges may arise by putting myself in that position, that I may personally not necessarily be in the best position to handle them. And what I mean by that is, if for instance I want to date an older girl, and her mindset might be a case of, I want to have kids soon, or I want to get married soon, I want to accelerate that process. I may not want to possibly do that because I'm of the nature of let it happen naturally. I'm not saying that that can't happen, but let it unveil on its own accord. And then there's also the mindset of like, okay, cool, I definitely want to be in a relationship, but like I don't want to deal with that pressure. If I possibly go for someone a bit younger who's not possibly thinking like that, what does that mean? Are they serious? Do they want that actual real connection that I'm looking for without the pressures that come with it? Or is it a case of they just want to fuck around and mess around and it's okay? And then it's like, I find myself in this boat where it's a bit like, I know what I'd like to have, but the reason why I can't put myself in that position just yet, because I personally don't feel I am succeeding where I can be what I feel a father and a husband should be, and that's a provider in his own right. And like that challenge always comes up, and I feel like a lot of guys have this issue right now. So when I speak to, let's say, female clients, or if I speak to generally, I need to stop saying females because people have a go at me for saying that. When I speak to women, there you go. When I speak to women, and they make it very clear that like, why are guys not serious about it? I try and help them understand that there's possibly a number of reasons right now where they may be heartbroken, etc., or dealing with a lot of stuff. And generally, if they've been nurtured in a way where they feel like they need to be a provider and they're not quite there yet in their own mind frame, they haven't got the assets, because apparently that's a success. That's a tick box in the list of what is deemed as successful, or they haven't got their own business, or they're not earning a certain salary, which is another tick box. Like, understandably, they might not be in a position where they can give you what you want, because you possibly haven't made it clear that that's okay, that they're not there either.
Yeah, I think, I mean, so during lockdown, I really looked into kind of masculine and feminine energy.
You should have been in the last conversation. And she's from your area as well. Don't worry. I did tell her as I left. I was like, the thing is that this conversation is going to have to be repeated again. So when the next guest or whoever comes in who feels that they want to bounce off this, we'll bring it back in. But carry on.
Well, there's a polarity to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
In terms of what's a masculine and feminine energy. And a woman can embody a masculine energy and a man can embody a feminine, and vice versa. It's just about being true to what your authentic self is. So if your natural energy is, I'm masculine, which means I want to provide, I want to take care, not manipulate, not a toxic masculine who's like, I'm this, I manipulate, I'm in control, I'm in charge, it's by me. But more of a, I want to take care of, I want to provide. It's a very natural male thing to feel that way, that I should be able to take care of my family. Equally, a woman who is in her feminine energy, she's more likely to gravitate towards a man who she feels safe with as a leader.
Yeah.
Not because she can't lead. She can lead perfectly fine. But she's not going to kind of relax into that relationship because she won't trust that he's leading his leadership skills or style. And truthfully, she's only going to trust his leadership when she knows that he has my best interest at heart.
Yeah.
So he's going to always look out for me. He's going to always have my back. Until then, there will always be that battle of egos almost. And that's when you know it's not really working. So whether it's age or where people are, I don't think it really matters. It's more about that alignment of actually we're on the same page, we're kind of working from the same disposition, and also we want the same thing.
Yeah.
Because often people can be dating one another and there's such a big conflict because one person wants something and the other person wants another thing, but they know they want each other.
Okay, cool. So just to go into that, because I feel like that comes up a lot more often than people actually like try to. The challenge that comes up, and I feel like they say that whether or not they actually mean it or if that's actually legitimate is one thing, but it could be a case where it's they both want each other, but they're both on different wavelengths and different paths.
Yeah.
What do you advise people in that scenario?
I think you need to be really honest. You need to be honest with one another in terms of what you can give. And if your needs are not getting met and you're communicating your needs, that this is what I desire in a relationship, this is what I want, and the other person is saying this is what I'm capable of giving. If your needs are not being met and it's far from, say you're looking for a committed relationship and the other person's only offering you a casual relationship at the moment, if there's such a big gap, you have to be brave enough to walk away.
What about in the extent of, like, say, I think the example is he's just the right guy or she's just the right girl, but what they want in their life right now and what I'm looking for right now was slightly out of tune, but I know in due course we could definitely make it work. It's just I'm just impatient, or I'm ready to like just wait for them to be ready and hold it down. I feel like that kind of behavior creates like an element of toxicity that then
100%.
turns up.
Like if you're sat waiting for somebody to change, waiting for somebody to choose you, over time I'm quite the believer of, truthfully speaking, you're a guy, you can let me know better, but I think when guys know they want to be with that girl, they're gonna go for her. They're gonna make a move, they're gonna try, they're gonna do what they can to be with her. They're not gonna back down.
I'll give you a bit more context after the episode, don't worry.
Okay, fair enough. But I do feel like when they're ready, when it's not about when he's not ready, he's just gonna be fooling around. You know, that's what he's gonna do. He's gonna be wasting time. And she's going to be like, oh, maybe he'll settle down. Maybe he'll choose me. Maybe I'll be the one that changes him. It's a fantasy. It's an absolute fantasy. But when a guy is ready, he's ready in himself, in his life, in his, entirety. I am ready for that relationship. I feel like I can give to it. I can commit to it. And I can, deal with everything that comes with it. He will seek out the woman that he wants to be with, and she doesn't need to do anything.
So should you be patient if you feel like you have all of this great vibes and great aura and energy that you're taking in from this person that you're in the room with right now? Like, I know right now is not the best place because career's in the way, or emotionally something's gone on and they're not necessarily quite stable. Like, I can say first and foremost, like, for instance, if I was dating someone who was very stressed out work, but literally we're going to make this work, it's definitely going to work, but right now work is so important to them to get to that next level for them personally and their own achievements that they've got to go for it. Their time's going to be limited. In my head, I'll be thinking, how important is it for me to hold this down and just be available rather than just saying no, goodbye, and walking in another direction?
I think
that being one extreme. The other extreme would be, let's say, for instance, someone's emotionally traumatized by, like we talked about earlier, healing from, let's say, ex relationships. They still can't get over the fact that they got cheated on, or they can't get over the fact that that bad things always happen to them, where people just always leave them, maybe grief or whatever it is. Like there's so many different elements of it. I'm the kind of person personally who's in a position where I analyze and I say to myself, I know what I'm worth, I know what I bring to the table. I'm willing to give it a go until whatever, and just be patient, because as a coach, looking even deeper at it, you're not being authentically yourself, and I get that. So once this process has taken place and you're in a more stable mindset, maybe the lifestyle I want to be living with, the kind of woman of my dreams might be you then. But I feel like some people don't even get to that stage because they get advised, know your worth. If they're not bringing it to the table, walk away. I tell this, I give this piece of advice to friends and family, and when it comes to coaching clients, I try and remind them of their worth. But there is that battle, right?
I think it's different, right? So for example, if you're both working on being in a relationship, you have a common goal, you have common goals in your relationship of wanting to be together and heading in the same direction and all of those sorts of things. If it's like a career thing or something like that, you can work with that maybe. Okay, this is for a short period of time and I appreciate it's going to put a strain on our relationship, but we're heading in the same direction, we're going in the same direction. But if you are waiting for somebody, if your life is on hold for somebody, that is not a good place to be.
I'm thinking of The Ultimatum on Netflix. I just binged it very recently, so it's very fresh in my mind. And like more the common examples are the person who's issuing the ultimatum is ready for that next step, which is marriage, and trying to work towards having kids and settling down and building this life together. And the other person is slightly on edge, and they go through this whole process of trying to figure out whether or not they are ready or not, if there are any fears that are holding them back, etc. And I feel like, is that healthy to stick around or wait for that? Or should you be upfront with yourself and know that, look, your time is also very limited. You know what you're really looking after, despite them bringing 9 out of 10, everything that you're looking for, not everything clearly, but 9 out of 10, this could be the best relationship I've ever had.
It could be, but if somebody's not sure about you, it's a really dangerous place to wait. It's a very dangerous place for that person because it's not fair on them. They're ready. They are ready. They know what they want. They know where they want to go. And actually, by them waiting, what's going to happen is it's going to trigger so much anxiety in them, so much stress, so much worry.
Depression as well.
Totally. So what they're going to end up doing is they might even have a secure attachment style, but they become anxious because they're like, I don't know where I stand with this person. I don't know where I'm going. And so soon enough, the conversations become conversations that are undesirable. And it's sort of like everything refers back to where are we heading? Where are we heading? More
tiptoeing and walking on eggshells rather than being...
Absolutely. So now the relationship feels like a burden and we're not even married.
This is actually very, very good.
So this is what becomes problematic. And that person, their anxiety is going through the roof. Not only that, their self-esteem is going into their boots. They're thinking, he doesn't think I'm worthy. He doesn't think I want to, be with this woman, or she's the person for me. He might not be thinking that, but this is what the other individual is experiencing. So what happens in that situation and that dynamic? There's been this beautiful experience of whatever description that's gone on, and it's like, oh God, idolizing, this could be the most amazing relationship. It could be. It's just all been kind of inflated into it could be this magnificent thing. And then the rug has been pulled from under your feet because it's not. And that hurts. It's really painful. And what I mean by that is that it's almost like putting somebody up on a pedestal and then throwing them off it. And so you're building up their confidence and their esteem that I really love you and care about you and so on and so forth. And then it's just the next minute they're on the ground thinking, what just happened? And so what I would say is that do not hang about for somebody who's not sure on you.
I use the analogy in terms of you're playing a game of cards, 52 cards in a deck, and out of nowhere, a joker's just been pulled out of nowhere. You didn't see it coming. It's just completely fucked you right over. Game plan's gone. It is a nasty place to be in. And I feel like there are people who I speak to regularly who feel this way in mind. And it's very, I don't want to say easy to say that, it's not a healthy place for you. Don't put yourself in there. Walk away from it. But when you are attached or when you are invested into it, it can be a hard step to just
It can be,
walk away.
but sometimes it's a trauma bond that's being
Yeah,
created.
yeah,
Sometimes it's actually not authentic love.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it's more of the case of, gosh, I can't lose this person. Essentially what happens is when you get an inconsistent relationship going, when you hear from that person, there's a huge amount of dopamine that's being produced even in the brain, right? So the time that you don't hear from them, and because they've said something hurtful, they're inconsistent, you're in a roller coaster relationship
yeah,
with somebody, you don't hear from them. All of those feelings of anger, frustration, whatever it might be, dissipate because it's like a drug. We're so hungry for it. And it's kind of like, when is the next time he's going to text me or come and see me or whatever it might be? And you get that rush again.
yeah,
And then it's so painful. And that's why it's a roller coaster. You're on a high and a low, like
Yeah.
you're on drugs, basically.
yeah,
And you're constantly trying to regulate yourself and you can't. And before you know it, it will start crippling into other areas of your life. And because you can't focus, you can't think, you don't know what you're doing, it's really difficult to handle ourselves. So this trauma bond dynamic that we can get into, it's not love. And often, to be honest, both the anxious person and the avoidant person, they're both avoidance. They want to be in a relationship, but then they don't want to be in a relationship. Or maybe they, I don't know, have a situation somewhere else. Who knows? There are so many different dynamics that are playing out in the world that we live in today. I think we need to think about, is this actually a healthy dynamic that I'm in? Is this impacting on my mental health,
Yeah.
my emotional health, my well-being? And am I suffering? And if I'm suffering, what am I doing here? They're unsure on me. They show up every now and then. And the brain is not your friend in this situation.
yep,
It will gravitate
towards
towards
that.
them.
Yeah,
It wants them, it craves them. And you almost have to rewire your pathway. You have to do something different in that moment. So instead of trying to contact them
yeah,
and call them or try to see them, you have to, go drink some water or something like that, or go for a run, or go meet with a friend. You have to engage in a completely different activity so you can rewire your brain and say every time it goes down that pathway, eventually it will strengthen. That when you desire that connection or that person or that dopamine rush is what you're really looking for, you go and do something different to disengage.
we're gonna have to leave it there.
Cool.
Because we need to have a personal chat on the back end of this, because this is actually lit. This has been so good. Big thank you for coming through it.
No
And
problem.
I said it at the end of the last podcast. Look, it happens every single time when I'm in the room. The conversation is legit so good, and I told you this before, and this could be like a 2-hour chat. So I have been like engrossed by what you're saying. Like, it's taking me by storm. It's nuts, and hence why I want to chat to you after this anyway. But that being said, how can others who have been taken back by this and have enjoyed what you've said, or generally are more intrigued to like possibly speak to you and work with you, what's the best way of them doing that?
So you can find me on Neuro Mind Body on Instagram at the moment.
Try that again, but do it at the camera.
Okay. I'll do it again. Take 2. You can find me on Neuro Mind Body on Instagram and connect with me via that. Send me a message or something like that, and I'll see. We can maybe book a call, and my time is limited because I have another job, but I will do my best to see if we're the right fit for one another to work and connect.
There we go. It's quite cool. There we go. Big thank you for coming through.
My
It's been
pleasure.
a pleasure.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Sick.